perfectionist with it. I try to make sure each word you can feel the word that's being used as the consumer, if that makes sense.
Love it, man. I love your passion behind it. Tom, what's up? Dr. Tachi, Aaron. It says Alexa, but it says Alexa. Okay.
Good morning. Good morning. Apologies
Jason,
for being a minute behind schedule. Can we do a quick reset?
Let's do it. Exactly, Tom. And that's what we should do. I had an idea that we should start the live stream about a half hour in too. I thought about that the other day. I wanted to propose that to you, but that's just something.
I think we take people along for the full ride.
Okay, seeing us when we go back and forth. Hello, our mic's on. Okay, so This not the smartest guys in the room. We do this room every Wednesday. We were starting to talk. I was pushing the little things up at the top where it says books, podcast, storytelling, and then I said, okay, we're going to talk about details. I love talking about the details of a story, and Aaron jumped in with some just passion for detail and storytelling, which I appreciate that passion. So that is where we're at today, Tom. And then
awesome, I love it.
I wanted to go on that route of this. I've been reading Anthony Bourdain, Kitchen Confidential. I watched his documentary, and as soon as I saw the documentary, I saw that he sent an email one time to one of his friends. And the email was so well written and so interesting. The friend's wife was a publisher, showed the publisher the email, and they offered Anthony Bourdain a book deal right then. This is before he was Anthony Bourdain that traveled. This was before he had traveled the world for on his cooking shows. He had traveled the world and stuff. But so I wanted to know. I needed to get I like to study books and research and things like that, presidents, whatever. But I needed to see what was he writing about. So I started reading Kitchen Confidential. And the detail he writes with is so impressive. It is actually romantic. And I told my wife that one day, and I said, it's romantic, the book. And you would say, well, how is a story about a kitchen romantic? How is a story about, he talks about being a fishmonger. He talks about cutting chunks of beef, all that stuff. How is that romantic? Because he does it with such passion, because he does it with such love, such zest that you get it. And you're like, wow, this guy loved working the fryer. This guy loved the broiler. This guy loved the travel, the cutting fish, the tasting a mussel, all those things. And that's the detail that just excites me. And so that's where I was going in this. If you can make the reader, the viewer feel that, damn, you accomplished something. So go on, Tom, jump in on that, and then let's meet some of our friends.
Yeah, man. You know what I think it is? What comes to mind, first of all, I wanted to ask, this is your first time reading Kitchen Confidential?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. So I haven't read it in years. I read it years ago. I also worked with the company and for the company that produced Anthony Bourdain's shows. So I met Anthony Bourdain a few times back in those days. And had read his book before then, was a fan of his writing style and was a fan of the show, the shows that he did. But I think what it was, the reason why Kitchen Confidential was so successful was it was the right book at the right time with the right author. And what I mean by that, I'm going to clarify that statement because that sounds like it could just be, generic bullshit, pardon my French. But what I mean by that is it came out in a time where there was not a lot of really engaging nonfiction coming out, right? That all of the sort of nonfiction, or the majority of nonfiction that was being published by the big publishing groups, by the large publishers, were very sort of staid biographies of famous people, political leaders, heads of state, blah, 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 right? Like the very sort of staid, and it just sort of, his book, Kitchen Confidential, kind of fit into a place that nobody else was touching, right? It was kind of unexplored territory, and people were hungry for that because the nonfiction world had been staid for a while. in my opinion. The other thing was the right author. He was not someone who was famous for being an author, right? And he was not someone who was already famous. And I think that was an important distinction. People were used to seeing works from people who were famous, but not used to seeing works from unknowns. And there was some excitement about that, right? There was something that people got passionate about behind seeing a work like Kitchen Confidential from an unknown. And it also covered a topic that everyone could relate to because everyone's been to a restaurant, right? But we're not usually privy to the sort of inner workings of and the kitchen, what the kitchen looks like, right? And how restaurants actually work. We go in, we order our food, we get it delivered to our table, we eat it, we pay for it, we tip well, and then we go about our day, right? So, really getting to see that behind the scenes, that peek behind the curtain, I think was really interesting for a lot of people. And ultimately, I think it boiled down to the fact that Anthony Bourdain was incredibly passionate about food and the role food plays in culture, right? And that passion, I talk about this, not this specific example, but I talk about passion in my book, coming out later this year. But I talk about passion, and I talk about how it can't be faked, right? That being relentlessly authentic, right, means that you share your passion, that you focus in on what you're most passionate about, and you share that with your audience. And that's what Anthony did so well, was he was incredibly passionate about food and the role it plays in culture, and that's what he focused on, right? And so that's why I think Kitchen Confidential, for all of those reasons, that's why I think Kitchen Confidential was such the phenomenon that it was. It still sells well today, right? So yeah, I don't know. That's my 14 cents. That was definitely more than 2 cents. What is I'd love to hear what other people think.
Perfect. And we got Dr. Tachi here. And when you talk about behind the scenes too, like he took us behind the scenes, Dr. Tachi often takes us behind the scenes. And that's something we talk about a lot here. Like how interesting Tom's world is to me, how interesting Dr. Tachi's world is to me. Like we had that Najet, your friend, what was her name, Tom, the whiskey taster? Nadej tasted whiskey. I think she might have even done it overseas or in different places like that. Completely interesting. I am from Pittsburgh. I go to Steeler games and help people publish books. That's my world. So seeing somebody taste whiskey in a whole nother side of the globe is completely foreign to me and very interesting. Just as I always think it's important to take people behind the scenes. Dr. Chachi, go on. Steer us in the right direction here.
Yay. How's everyone? I hope everyone is having a great day thus far, early as it is in the U.S. You're bringing up Anthony Bourdain, and I'm right with you. I have not read Kitchen Confidential yet, but I actually, as you were talking, am looking on Amazon to try and get it because I loved Anthony Bourdain. There was this, not only this realness, but just this respect, which, I think it can transfer to many fields, to many things that we do. This respect that he had for each culture that he went into. Part of my gripe sometimes when people go to different places, particularly different places in Africa, it's about going on safari. It's about, so people tell me, oh, yeah, I've gone on safari. That's nice, but you went to go see animals and not people. And they reduce certain places, especially countries in Africa, to the resources and the animals that are there. And they don't realize that there are people that live there. And I love the way that he went into all of these different cultures. And there was a respect for the culture first. Even though he was passionate about food, the food was secondary because it was about the people understanding who they are and learning who they are. So if we take that as a lesson into all of these things, especially, okay, in media, and I'm sure Tom can agree with this, it's about the person first. So when you're storytelling or you're telling a story, sometimes it's about an event. Sometimes it's about a place, but there are always people involved in those events and places. So always think about the human aspect and the person first. And I think that's a lesson that we can take from Anthony Bourdain and his approach to food, that it was always about people first. I release.
Dr. Tachi, that was absolutely beautiful, and I thank you for sharing it. Great, right? This the art of the story, and Dr. Tachi's sharing. It's about the people first. So, um, just thank you. That's all I can say. Stick around, Tom. I'm out of words already. Not the smartest guys in the room. Go on.
I was just going to say, well, and I think along the lines of what Dr. Tachi's saying, to add to that, it's about the people first, because the people are what makes the story relatable, right? And that's such a key component to storytelling that is often overlooked. When you often I hear people, and we all have these people in our lives, right? We've all had this experience where you're out at a networking event, or at a gathering, even a gathering of friends, and there's that one person that you come across that cross your path regularly, who's a terrible storyteller. And I would be willing to bet that if you listen to that person tell stories, one of the defining characteristics of how they tell stories is they recite facts. They don't actually tell stories, right? And this goes back to what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago with Matt Stone and Trey Parker's "and then" instead of "but therefore," right? But those people just recite facts. They don't tell stories. And the reason why their stories are not relatable, why they're not enjoyable to listen to, why you don't go out of your way to talk to them and listen to their stories, is because they're not putting the people first. It's not about how the events impacted the people, right? Or the impact that situation had on the individual, how they felt, right? Kind of that visceral connection that we all feel with good stories. It's about, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And you're like, I can't relate to that because that exact sequence of events has never happened to me. So it's entirely unrelatable, but we can all relate to human experience because we're all humans and we all have experiences, right? And those experiences are more analogous, more similar than they are different most of the time. So yeah, I think it's you put people first, and that's what makes stories relatable to the audience, right? To the listener. And that's what makes good stories, is the fact that the audience can see themselves in the characters and really relate and emote and empathize with them. So just wanted
Thank
to
you.
add
Okay,
that.
so now we're going to get into good stories, and how do we tell them? How do we message them? That kind of stuff. Okay, so let's keep this rolling. We got Alexa. I think that's how I pronounce it. Alexa, what's going on? What do you got? You got a question for us, or you have a storytelling tip?
Hey everyone, it's Alexa. The Alexa booth is fine. I'm actually just starting my podcast, so I'm here to listen and learn. So I've got nothing to add at this point. Thank you.
Okay, hang out, be cool, and I think you're gonna have some. Hey, here's a radio host and syndicated radio host and podcaster and storyteller. John just popped in, so I'm sure he'll have some input on storytelling. So, Joyce, what do you got? Storytelling tip or question, or just go wherever you want to go. Go on.
Good morning. I love Anthony Bourdain. He's actually part of my story. When I tell my own story, he's a storyteller who I relate to, and it's so interesting. He's so universal. Storytelling so important. That's what I do on the podcast. I don't know. This week I'm doing something a little bit different. The show that's coming out tomorrow. I've been doing this podcast for 4 years now, and I just need a little bit more help getting exposure. So I'm actually, putting it out there tomorrow, asking for help. I think I've told you this before, but I live in the house that Tip O'Neill, his father, built. So I say I'm from the Tip O'Neill studios of North Cambridge. He's a politician, and his famous saying was, "People like to be asked." So that's what I'm doing on this podcast this week, storytelling about me and asking for help. And just Anthony Bourdain, he's so universal. I think this is so interesting. And then just a quick funny thing. I was just looking out my window and a squirrel just popped up and looked at me. It kind of freaked me out. I don't know what that means. So,
Well, you are the cannabis mom, right? So,
who knows?
yeah. How do you start your day? How deeply is that squirrel looking at you?
And then I just had a weird podcast thing. I had my guest canceled last night, last minute, which podcasters, it happens once in a while. But I am revamping my show for a different guest as we speak this morning. So I'm just kind of listening in. So thanks for this time, guys.
Okay. Hey, Joyce, when you have a guest on your show, and John, Prof T, Dr. Tachi, when you have guests on your show, do you ask them to promote it, or is that not expected, or is it obvious they should like follow your show and stuff like that? I mean, what's the proper etiquette? They should, but do they know, or do they think they're like above that? So go on.
Well, I mean, we do usually send. I mean, we send images, and we hope that they will, but people don't always do. Whatever. Who knows? Yeah, I would expect that they would, but it doesn't always happen.
John, go on.
Yeah, I tell them and explain to them very quickly that it's a 24/7, 365 marketing platform for them, their story, and if there's a service, a book, or speaking, whatever they do involved. So yes, I send them all the information, including the caption I use, the direct link, not to Apple, not to Spotify, to my hostings. Everybody can choose which platform they listen on, and an episode cover image. And I'm glad you brought that up because the guy that was guest on the show this released this morning. I sent him all the information. He replied back with, "Hey, will you tag me on the post? Here's one for LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram." My reply was quite simple. I'd be happy to tag you as long as you promote the show and also the organization you represent promote the show. And the implication is, and I'm not saying this to be mean, but certain people and certain groups will get as much free advertising and marketing promotion as they can, and they will never promote your stuff as well. So the days of me doing that for them, besides putting them on a show, they get radio exposure, they get podcasts, they get social media, all that stuff, website as well. I won't go above and beyond unless they are reciprocating, and I make that perfectly clear.
That's absolutely fair. And I wonder that because sometimes a guest may think they're above some. Well, it's a mutually beneficial thing. I want to share, I want it to grow. But then I sometimes see like, how do you ask them? Yeah, I want you to subscribe. I mean, the bare minimum, could you at least subscribe here? We spent like all these hours filming and editing and recording and research. You can't push subscribe, or at least share it once. So it's got to be so frustrating and make you want to rip your hair out. So I had somebody that wanted. Now I'm all into the tag, retag, share. I'll put it on the website. I had somebody that said, we want you to send our letter to your email list. And they were like, check things you'll do, things you won't do. And I was like, I won't send it to my email list.
Absolutely not. Here's the thing. Again, if you want me to email my subscribers, that's going to cost money. Time is money. And it's taken me years to build that list. It's taken me years to build this show. It's taken me years to get it on all the radio stations I'm on. And I tell them, look, you're going to get exposure to 1.5 to 2 million people uh, hearing your show. So if you want me to do more, I'm more than happy to accommodate you, but I don't do the extra work for free. I don't know of anybody that can pay their bills for free. Your landlord, your mortgage company, the travel company, the airlines, credit card companies, car payments, whatever it is, none of them takes promissory notes and demands for free promotion. So I don't work for free, nor should anybody else, ever.
Good point, John. And I think one of the things that I concentrated on in 2022 was charging for ad hoc requests. These things that were really above and beyond the scope of the contract. And I will continue, like you said, well, we never agreed on that. And now you want me to do this, and this. Sure, there's always some value add, some extra giving and things like that. But then there's that's a whole nother job. That's going to take another team, things like that. But I wonder for you podcasters out there and radio, is there a point where you could say, here, I do this. This is part of it. I give you this, 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 but I'll break down these clips and do this, this, and this. And here's a whole other, because when you have people's voices and videos and things like that, I wonder if there's almost like something that they would be willing to pay for. Just, yo, sure, I can buy the raws of these videos or these messages. I'd love to have it. How much you going to charge me? And like you said, John, it would cost more, but I am wondering about that. All right, let's go on,
Tom. Tell me, make that a little bit more clear for me, because I think I have an answer for that, but I want to make sure that I'm understanding you correctly. Are you talking about like you have for a client you're providing a specific like service out, like I'm, or just a podcast host?
So multiple things. So just to clarify for the podcaster. So let's say I have 100 authors and I try to get them podcast and radio shows and press, however, a morning show, whatever. Well, sometimes the majority of the time those are free. It's free for the author to go on. So there's a cost. Like there's a cost for John to have his team edit and things like that. And so now they get this message, they fill their platform, whatever. But what I'm suggesting is a podcaster, could they say, well, they give you the normal links of the pictures. They give you a picture to share that says that here's your show. They give you maybe what's it called, an audiogram where your voice is on the thing. Okay, each of those are levels of things you get sometimes from being a guest somewhere. What I'm saying is, okay, that's status. I would be willing to do X for this podcaster or for this guest that was on. And so I'm wondering if for any of these hosts of the show, is it just a quick value add that could make them a few bucks where they'd say, hey, like John said, I don't work for free. I do this, this, and this. If you want me to do this, I have all the tapes. I'm willing to pull you 10 more audio files from your interview or something like that. I just think, and maybe because I'm not in that world, maybe it would take 50 hours and it's not worth the time. But I see these authors that are just looking for content to put out and they just don't have it. So if seeing that as a benefit. So that's all I got, Tom.
Okay, so here's what I think. I think it kind of falls into two categories, right? So one is branded and one is white label, right? So if the podcaster is going to provide, supercuts or, content around the podcast that includes the guest, and that's branded to the podcast, right? Then I think you give that away, right? You encourage the guest to get that in front of their audience, right? Because it's building brand recognition. It has the potential to bring more listeners into the podcast, to bring more people into your fold. It's basically, it's advertising you're not paying for because they're going to hype it up and talk about how great it was, et cetera, because it's them too. So if it's branded to the podcast or to the business, that owns the podcast, then I think you give it away, right? If it's white label content where the guest can then take it and rebrand it as their content or tie it to their own brand, then I think you have to charge for it. So I think that's the sort of, in my mind, that would be the deciding factor. And I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on this. I mean, obviously, I'm sure John has some thoughts and other folks in the room have some thoughts on this, but that's how I would look at it. Is if it's branded to the podcast, you give it away. You try to get that in front of as many people as you can. And then especially when it's endorsed, implicitly, and when it's white label content, then you charge for it.
Yeah, Tom made a great point. So when I do the radio show and podcast, everything I put out is done for free. There's no expectation of payment. And what I would love for people to do is promote it as well. They all don't. So remember, the return for me as a podcaster or as a broadcaster is digital traffic or digital exposure. meaning being exposed to their audience on their websites, their social media, their email newsletter, any of that stuff. I would love to tell you that they all do that. I'll be willing to guess that 90% of my guests do not, or the vast majority that have those resources are so small, it doesn't make a huge difference. But it's the effort that counts. However, when people go into other things, kind of like Dominic talked about, would you do this, this, and this? That's beyond the scope of that. There is definitely a fee for that. So one of the ways to determine that is, and I'm just going to use an example of people like to use the term pay per play as if it's a negative. When you listen to terrestrial radio stations across the United States, particularly on weekends, and you hear a vitamin show, a real estate show, a car show, whatever it might be, those are what they call brokered programs where you pay per hour. You pay to be on a show. They treat you like a commercial, like an advertiser. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That could be a very, very good thing if your business supports that. So you can look and say, look, I reach my potential reach per episode is 100,000 people. Look at what broker radio stations charge per hour for a weekend daytime slot for 1 hour, and that's what your rate can be. And don't be shy and say I'm only a podcaster. That's part of the problem. Podcasters are broadcasters, and creating a show for people to consume is our number one priority. If it becomes number two, number three, number four, more people are not going to consume a show and we don't grow. So when it comes to payment, if it's beyond the scope of what I do, then we discuss payment. If it's not, then it's all expected and part of the normal transaction for promoting my show. So kind of like Tom said, it comes with the territory. Thanks.
John, thanks, brother. We appreciate this. We're talking, this is not the smartest guys in the room. We renamed it this year. So if it's your first time back, it's got a new name. We picked it up at the end of the year.
We renamed it last year.
Okay. How many episodes?
2023.
Okay. I said if you haven't been here this year, you might not have seen it renamed yet. So, but yes, it was renamed last year. Not the smartest guys in the room. Go on, Tom. What
breaking
now?
your chops.
What?
Breaking your chops.
What
breaking your
now?
Chops,
What a jerk. Okay, so we're talking the love of storytelling, best ways to do it. Can you make money at it? Where should you do it? All these things. So Prof T, my friend, we got Prof T, and then we're coming to Jason. Go on, Prof T.
Hey, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good now, wherever you are. Hey, Dom and Tom, I have to tell you, I think this room should be called definitely the smartest guys in the room because this content and this conversation is amazing. So I'm pinging in some of my friends because this is a really good topic. I can only speak to the stories part. And I'm learning as I go. And that's why I love this room. I learned so much. But my tip for stories is this: just be yourself. Because for me, I have found that, when you know somebody and then you see them on a stage or listening to them on the radio and you're like, that doesn't even sound like them. So I would say for me, the best tip I could offer is be yourself, speak in your voice, and just be you. Be you, do you. Thanks, Prof T. Over to you. Thanks. Hi, John Jay. Great topic stuff, by the way.
Prof T, how do you pick up on if let's say you go on and you pretend to be somebody else, or you don't know what your voice is and you realize that, that wasn't me, or I was somebody else, or I don't have the voice that I want? How do you know, and how do you correct it?
So I think because and you're knower. Like, I don't feel like I nailed it that time. For instance, if you did something where you felt a little less than, but I think the best piece of advice for that to know how and what to do, you gotta have people in your life that you can say, hey, just do me a favor, listen to this, watch the replay, or do me a favor, let me practice with you. I can't stress enough how important it is to have people that are doing what you are doing well speak into your life, as a coach, a mentor, an advisor, a consultant. That's how you know. Because if left to yourself, you may miss opportunities to grow and change. And you always want to be able to dig deep and access that deep part of your knower to bless the audience. This is always about benefiting the hearers. So I hope that answers the question. Thanks.
Thank you, Prof. T. And earlier, Dr. Tachi said it's always about the people first when we were talking about the stories. So, yeah, two of our favorites sharing something similar. Okay, Jason, man, what do you got going on? Where you want? How do you want to weigh in on this? And sorry for the shitty segue. That's who I am. Sorry, I'm working on it, man. Okay, Jason, what do you got for us?
I don't really know if I can really add to anything, but if you want to be a broadcaster, podcaster, vlogger, whatever, if you want to tell a good story, then you're going to have to learn how to listen to people that tell good stories. And it's like when I read to my kids, the one big difference when I read to my kids and my significant other, my future wife, she says, you put so much animation in your voice, like you imagine you're the being. Like we were reading Dragons Love Tacos the other night, and you accentuated certain words, and I'm like, because I imagine myself as a dragon telling you why I don't need to hear about tacos right now. you know if I start hearing about tacos, I'm going to start wanting to breathe my fire and destroy the castle or whatever. So the point is, I had to learn and watch myself in my YouTubes, and when I started listening to my own stuff, I learned about how I could start animating for interest. Because if it's like, remember the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and the teacher's like, Bueller, Bueller, and you get that monotone voice. There's so many people that produce like this, create rooms like this, create streams like this, and they wonder why they don't get any attention. They wonder why that no one wants to listen. They may have really good content, like it's the thing they need to hear. But being a storyteller is, you're the imaginer. You're the one that's giving the imagination the gateways. Come with me on this journey. Come with me on this place of life where I'm exploring with you, or I'm really curious about these thoughts. And if you can get away from being the expert, because the storyteller isn't necessarily the expert. The storyteller is more than the expert. He's the one he's painting the brush, and your mind is now putting the colors, the shapes, the animation, the action into life right now when someone's consuming your material. And then they're either going to want to come back for the sequel or the chapter. How many books have you started and you never finished because the storyteller sucked? I'm just going to say it for what it is. They suck. But you give it in somebody else's hands, and it's all of a sudden interesting. Same concept, same story. It's delivery, your interest, your imagination, and willing to not worry about the rules. Just play the role so that you can inspire and interest people. And I'll just stop there.
Jason, thank you, man. And I always, even you can hear it in his voice how he does tell a story. I find myself looking for him in different rooms when I have some clubhouse time, between here. If anybody stops by here, maybe you stop by for 10 minutes, an hour, 5 minutes, but you should check out other people on the app and things, and him and John and Prof T are some of the people I'm checking out more and more and more. So, hey, thank you for the tips. Not the smartest guys in the room. That's true. Emmy, what do you got, my man? Give us some tips.
What's up, Tom? Hey, thanks for having me here, and love just love the conversation. I mean, I'm not sure how much I could add, but I definitely agree with what Jason was saying. Is if whatever it is that you want to do, I mean, if you want to speak, you want to be a writer, storyteller, I think the first step really is just to consume as much info as you can. That way, you can tell what you like, the things that you are into, and that way you can recognize what quality is if it really hits you, and then after that, just kind of take your own spin on it. Don't try to be what you're not, and because that lack of authenticity will really repel some people. But I think it's the main thing is just kind of like being there. Just it's like a craft, like anything. You learn from the best. You watch, you get mentorship if you need it, and then just go out there and just grind. So that's about really it. Really, I mean, I just love being these rooms, just learning from so many people. So I hope you guys have had a good new year. So I'll just keep learning and listening. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Emmy. And I'm a big believer in as a publisher of books and like a student of inspiration. I do consider myself a student of inspiration, but having to read the Dale Carnegies, the Zig Ziglars, the Norman Vincent Peales, the Tony Robbins, the Jeffrey Gittimers, the John C. Maxwells, to understand Ed Millett, Atomic Habits, whatever, to understand the market, what's going on, what happens in these books, and then seeing, oh, where does your message fit? How do you do it different? I read a lot of books. I read a lot of books that are just facts. Well, I've heard this theory for 130 years. How is it different when you tell it? So that's why the story is so important, letting me know, letting the reader know your story. Yes, how do we implement these basic lessons? I must persist until I succeed. Greet each day with love in your heart. Treat your neighbor, whether it's the golden rule or whatever. Okay, take that lesson, that basic moral, that the thermometer theory, the oxygen mask theory, all these theories. Okay, now how do you implement it in your own life, in your own story? Now, I want to ask Tom a question. Tom, what do you think about this idea of, and anybody else that is familiar with this, please jump in. You have to know the rules to break the rules. So to Emmy's point of understanding this story, like everybody's like, well, I saw Quentin Tarantino, and Quentin Tarantino is a freaking genius. He knows every rule, and that is why he can make the show, because he can also do, but to not understand the arc of the story, the art of the story, what needs to be accomplished. So Tom, do you think you need to understand those basic principles before you can flow down your own path or do your thing?
Yes. Just kidding. I mean, yes, I'm not just kidding about that, but I think you do have to know the rules to break the rules, right? Because if you know the rules, then you are breaking the rules with a purpose, with intention, with a goal in mind, right? If you don't know the rules and that's why you're breaking the rules, then it's because you're doing it in a haphazard way, because you lack intention, because you lack purpose in the decisions you're making. And I think those impact the overall outcome of the work that you do and the viability of the stories that you tell, right? So if you break rules with intention, if there's a clear reason behind and a purpose behind why you're breaking the rules, I say go for it, right? If you're breaking rules because you just can't be bothered to learn them, then I think you go back to the drawing board. But that's my 2 cents. That's my opinion. That's my thoughts. So yes.
So do you think it is a benefit to also, because read other works in your genre and things like that? Somebody might say, oh, I can't be bothered with looking at other stuff because mine's so unique, or I don't want them to influence me. If I read another book on media, Tom's writing a book on the next generation. If I read a book on media, I'll be influenced. So what do you think?
It's too late. You're already influenced. Like people who say they don't want to look at other people in their space because they're afraid of being influenced by them or whatever. It's too late. You're already influenced. If you know they exist, if you know that there are other approaches to doing what you do, which you should, right? You should be passionate about and well versed in your area of interest, in your expertise, in your area of expertise. If all of those things are true, then it's too late. You've already been influenced, right? I mean, we're all influenced by everything we do. I have so the founder of Bombas, David Heath, in an interview talked about his definition of innovation, right? and he defines and he thinks about innovation as not as creating something new from whole cloth, but innovation is all about taking things that already exist and putting them together and using them in new ways, right? Like all of the sort of biggest inventions of our lifetimes, of the 20th century, of the 21st century, have all been built off of existing technology, right? Off of existing methodologies. So everything we do is influenced, right? We're never creating something brand new out of nothing. Everything we do, everything we create, everything we innovate on, if you're innovating on something, it has to already exist, right? So it all is influenced. So I don't waste your time trying to put yourself in a vacuum and remove all outside influence because I don't know, somebody planted the seed in your head that you're just so special that you should just stand alone. Like, guess what? It's too late. You're already influenced. If you exist in the world, you've been influenced. So accept it, use it to your advantage, innovate off of it. But yeah, just you're influenced. Deal.
I was reading. I don't know if any of you guys have ever read the book Save the Cat, and it's a screenwriting book. And one of the things they say is, "Give me the same thing but different." So they, like Tom's, something that was successful. Now give it a twist. So you can look at. I just wrote down. You can look at the movie Die Hard, and then as soon as you have the movie Die Hard, then you have that movie where Sandra Bullock and is on a bus. It's Die Hard on a bus. Then you have Harrison Ford in a plane. It's Die Hard on a plane. Then you have Sylvester Stallone in a tunnel. It's the same concept. Same with like Groundhog Day. They've done Groundhog Days that are scary movies, Groundhog Days that are motivational. You just keep, it's the same thing, but it is different. Give me something different. Hey, let's see here. Jason, Tom messaged me here. He said you wanted to add something. Go ahead, my friend.
Well, a great example to watch the difference of a tone of a narrator, a storyteller. If you've never listened to The Alchemist by Pablo Coelho, narrated by Jeremy Irons, and then compare it to the other versions, when I listened to the other versions on YouTube, I was hearing some woman's voice, and it sounded like a child, and I just tuned out. But Jeremy's Iron's voice really captivate my imagination. And so my challenge would be to those, if you want to become a better storyteller, go read somebody else's work and try to present it like as if you were the one that were doing it, and take notes and listen to yourself and see, would you really listen to you? Would you want to continue going? How could you change the pitch? How could you change? Because I like what Tom said, how can you really challenge the rules if you don't know what the rules are? Well, the rule is like, what's the end game message? That's the rule. Where are you going with this? What's the point? What's the second rule? Attention. That is a rule. You can't have a storyteller be a storyteller unless someone is listening, reading, or attending. It's just that simple. So those are the simple rules. Now there's other supplemental and semantical rules that we make up that we think is successful. So I just wanted to add that point there.
I got thanks for adding that, Jason. Really appreciate it. And to that end, I think along with what you're saying, I wanted to circle back to what Dom was saying right before that, and then I want to answer. Dan was asking a question of me in the chat that I want to answer real fast. Dom was saying, like that but different, or like that but new, or what was the phrase again, Dom? You're muted, dude.
He was like referring to the diehards, or how many.
It's same but different. Give me the same but different.
Yeah, give me the
as
same.
As soon as I start pinging people, you call on me. You're real spunky today. Go on.
Give me the same but different, right? And what that made me think of was the fact that there are like a ton of, and one is like, by far the most recognized. But there are a ton of like story devices out there that people use, right? And probably the most recognized sort of story construct or device is the hero's journey, right? Which anybody who's done any work in storytelling, done any research in storytelling, like read about it, Googled it, has probably heard of the monomyth or the hero's journey. And that story structure, that construct that you can use, is exactly what Same But Different is all about, right? So it's give me the basic elements that make this story compelling, but give it to me in a new way, right? In the same way that, like, Homer's the Odyssey is an example of a hero's journey, in the same way that Star Wars is an example of a hero's journey, in the same way that the Harry Potter series is an example of a hero's journey, right? So all of those examples follow the same sort of prescription, the same structure. They're all adherent to the same construct, but they're different. So they're same but different. So that's a good way to think about that, is like, okay, the structure works. Don't fix what ain't broke, right? If the structure works, think about how you slot a news story or the narrative that you're trying to tell into a structure that is appealing to an audience, right? And then the question that Dan asked in the comments was, he said, if I'm saying that everything is influenced, how do you define original content, right? And so I would say that everything is influenced. There is no such thing as wholly original content, the likes of which has never been seen before, right? Which I think people get really hung up on that word original, and they think that it has to be unlike anything else that's ever been done. And I'm saying, not only is that an impossible standard to achieve, because whether you like it or not, if you've existed in the world, you have been influenced by the world around you, right? Like, period, end of story. I will die on that hill. You cannot convince me otherwise. Every single person who has ever lived has been influenced by the world around them. Like, we have this whole debate about nature versus nurture. Like, we could debate about the extent to which that's true, but it's happened, right? So original content is you putting, in my mind, it's you putting your particular spin, because while we're all influenced by the world around us, we are all also individuals. The way that influence impacts us, the way it shapes us and builds us as people, I think is unique, right? So when you make original content, it's original to you because there is only you. You are the only person in the world that has your exact lived experience. No one else does, right? And we know this is true. Like, we look at nature versus nurture debates and things like that. You look at studies on identical twins who are genetically identical but have very different life outcomes, and it's because we're all impacted by the world around us. And that even with even with being genetically identical, twins can be, different from the start. I believe that, people are gay not by choice, but by I don't know what's the right word. I don't want to say design. That's the word that popped into my head, but not by choice, right? People are not gay by choice. It is not a choice, right? Any more than I'm straight by choice. I know I grew up with a set of identical twins, one of whom is gay, both men, one of whom is gay and one of whom is straight. So, we're all individual. We're all impacted differently. We're the only ones that has our unique life experience. So that's what I think. I think that's what original content is it's your particular spin on content. It's not that the content itself is original. It's your take is what is the original. It's what you add is what is the original part, I think. If that makes sense. Hopefully that answers your question, Dan. And I appreciate that you weren't disagreeing, just curious and happy to
Well,
talk about it.
and I appreciate every time I've come in recently, you've been on your way out to your show. So I figured I would try to get some opinion out of you before you left.
Hey, thank you, Dan. Thank you. Okay, stick around, my man. Not the smartest guys in the room. Same thing, but different. It's interesting. We're talking about even I could really take every motivational book ever done and take it back to the Bible or the Quran or something like that and say they are all spin-offs of that. These are all some person's own story, added facts, that different life experiences. I was sitting with my son about a couple months ago. He's 16. He's going to be 17 soon. And he was telling me, he's like, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. He's just studying an English class, this kind of thing. He's like, same movie. And I'm like, what do you mean? And, because he's like, same mentor. He names, he's like, this guy, he lost his parents, and he had to go away. All these things, it's like, because to Dan's point, it's completely different. But when you study that basic, the hero's journey, hero crosses threshold, Luke leaves his family, Harry leaves this, Harry has to accept, fight with Darth Vader, fight with that guy that put the thing on his head. It's so similar when even down to the Ewok, to the weird little characters in Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. I mean, you got so similar. Okay, now we're moving on. Elise with the waffle behind her. Where do you weigh in on all this, Elise?
Hello, everybody. Good morning. I always love this room. I always learn a lot. So just thank you for having this room and holding this space. And it's an interesting concept that we're talking about, particularly with regards to, some of the stories that we tell and the underlying themes or narratives. And I think everybody in this room has done a really great job of articulating how many of these different stories, they all look and dress differently, but underneath them, they are very much the same journey. And I have a great deal of appreciation for recognizing that. I think one of the things that I myself am learning in this room, and as I go through my own creative process, is, getting to a point where the initial piece is created and you've gone through several rounds of revision. And I think, Tom, you said it well, with that part or that component of the creative process where you are kind of working within a vacuum, but also recognizing that there is a point in that process where it's time to collaborate. And I think one of the things that I'm really grateful for being in this room and being able to listen in and learn from folks who have gone through that phase is getting a better understanding of how to navigate that change from the initial creative process, which for the most part is done independently, and then how to move through that next phase of collaboration so that you can bring it to full fruition. So I certainly am not shy to admit that I have spent a lot of my creative time in that independence phase, which has been very fun and fruitful. But I certainly know that there's a lot to be learned about going to that next phase. So definitely learning a lot from this room, and really glad to be able to be here and listen with everyone. Thank you.
Elise, thank you. And I'm glad you brought up collaboration. This is something we've talked about over the last couple of weeks in this room, and me and Tom collaborate on this space. I don't know how to set up a live stream. Tom set up a live stream. This was a room I had done for a while, and I thought Tom would be a great addition, and we work well together. So then that's the beginning of a collaboration. Sometimes I'm writing a story. I wrote a story about Alzheimer's. So I'll tell you this multiple things here. Wrote a story about Alzheimer's, about my mom's had a battle with Alzheimer's for about 10 years. I was going to write the screenplay before I wrote the book, and then I decided, no, I'll write the book first. I thought it would be a better business move. give me same thing but different. I wanted to. The Notebook does touch on Alzheimer's, and there is some jumping back in time. I'm not trying to write that book, but I thought I wanted to share the story of a love story between a mother and a son. So a pure love story, not a love story like that. But if you're saying same but different, okay, that's on that. Now to collaboration, I have a writing partner on some stuff. I already wrote the book, sold thousands of copies, whatever. Now I wasn't good at writing the screenplay and the book at the same time. That was harder than I thought. And it's not the same. So now this guy that I write with, I am going to go to him because I believe he makes me better. He challenges me on everything. Every line that I write, he challenges me in a way that, well, why are you doing that? Why would they say that? People don't talk like that. But he does it in a way that makes me better. So when I'm done with, I'm going to go to him on this next project and bring him in because I feel that he will move the project forward. So I somebody clicked off there. So go on, John. Go on. Okay, so I want to be with people that I believe can move the project forward. Take me that are passionate about it, and can maybe we can get together and we can do more. So that's my thoughts on collaboration. Tom, Dr. Tachi, Jason, what do you think?
I mean, I'm a huge fan of collaborating in general. It is sort of fundamental to my whole approach to business, right? Is that I don't believe so much in competition as I believe in collaboration. And I see that a lot in the small business world in particular. You get into regions and people are very concerned about somebody else stepping on their toes, uh, somebody else horning in on their business or stealing their business. And it's because I believe we have this idea that business is a zero sum game, right? And it really isn't. It's not a zero sum game. Life is not a zero sum game, right? I understand that people think of it as a zero sum game because it involves money, right? But I think that's short sighted. It's not a zero sum game. There's plenty of pie to go around. And in working together, we can find ways not only to divide that pie up, but to make more pie, right? So that when we work together, there's always pie for people to have a piece of, right? That pie is, that we're continually reinvigorating, rejuvenating, adding to baking more pies. Now I'm hungry for a slice of pie. But we're continually adding to that pie so that it grows with us, with our businesses, with our communities, with the economy, so that everyone can have a piece, right? I 100% agree. I think collaboration is truly the best way to uh, really build sustainable, long-lasting relationships and businesses. But
Well, you also get to use the ability to borrow someone else's credibility to hold and build your own, which is, that watering of plants of everybody trying to grow together. That's really the best way to do it in all capacity. Everybody has a car guy, an insurance guy, a barber. You got to have a specific person, specific situation, and it works well. If you can find somebody that works well in what you're trying to do, the student can become the teacher at any time, right?
yeah, and to lend your credibility to other people too, I think is another important part that's often overlooked. But the value of, or the impact on you as an individual of giving to others cannot be understated. And so yeah, I think lending your credibility to other people as well is incredibly beneficial.
Okay, now we got to talk about something important. I'm going around to each person in this room. You asked for it. I want to know two answers, quick. Have you ever baked a pie, and what is your favorite pie? Aaron, go on.
Yes, and it's apple pie, man.
All right, yes, and apple. Tom.
Yes, apple, pumpkin, banana cream. I don't know. I've made a bunch of different kinds of pie.
Okay, anyway, is banana cream a pie? Yeah, I guess it is, but it's really
It's
different.
got a
Go on.
crust. Oh, well, cheesecake, which is technically a pie, I think too.
Fair. Okay, Jason.
Yeah, I've baked peach, apple, berry. Yes.
Damn, I have not ever baked a pie. I want to get into baking this year. That's one of my goals. Okay, Dr. Tachi, you ever bake a pie? What's your favorite?
Yes, I have, and three favorites: apple, sweet potato, and even though peach cobbler is not technically a pie, it has a crust, so it's pie.
Uh, who knew a crust made a pie? Okay, this is I'm learning something. See, this is why we're not the smartest guys in the room. I just learned a pie has
Well,
to
I
have a
have a
crust.
question about that. Okay,
Yeah.
does a cobbler come square or does it come in a pie plate?
It can come in whatever you like it to come in. It depends on what you bake it in.
So there,
Great
Jason.
answer.
Yeah. So there, Joyce. Pie. What's your favorite?
I'm not much of a kitchen person, but I do make a nice fruit galette, which is like sort of a easy version of a pie. You just kind of fold the dough over the fruit. So that is what I like to make.
Does it have a crust?
Oh yeah, it's a crust. It's all crust.
There you go. It counts. John, what do you got, man?
Yes, I have baked, but not since I was a kid. And I used to bake a lot because we had a pecan tree in our yard was pecan pie. And I really suck at it. My favorite's cherry.
Pecan pie. Very good. Okay. Emmy, what do you got?
And we love pie. I got to go with apple and pumpkin. We've done peach too, and with only the cobbler. And I like Dr. Tachi's answer because I definitely agree. Cobbler is pie.
Cobbler's pie. You heard it. Okay. Last one. Jess, what do you got? Have you ever made a pie, and what is your favorite?
Coconut cream pie.
Oh, the cream pie.
And my favorite is, ooh, I really don't have a favorite. I just like to cook. It's an outlet. And in my culture, it's just a way of sharing love and community and stuff like that. But good morning to everyone. And I'm glad to hear so many wonderful voices and just be here. Thank you.
Hey, well, Jess, and since we're right to you, we'll start this back at you. As a magazine publisher and storyteller and writer, what would you advise storytellers?
Authentic. Be authentic. Believe me that it doesn't matter what your story is. What matters is it being crafted and you being comfortable enough with how it's being told. And this room is full of like masterminds in the art of storytelling and podcasting. I mean, John, just a wealth of knowledge there, Tom, Dom, Jason, Dr. Tachi, like I used to come to this room all the time and I had to take a break. I moved. I now reside in Panama City Beach, Florida. So it's, a lot of change, but this room here is by far, since I've been on Clubhouse since its inception, provides so much quality. And just, what, you guys are more than just, just more than not the smartest guys. You guys are extremely smart, and I will say that. And everyone in this room has just a pivotal role, and you all touch my heart professionally and personally, and I just want to express that gratitude to everybody.
Jess, thank you. And we always appreciate you and your content. And anytime you tag us and things like that, you're out there doing it. So keep up the good work. I want to share quickly with everybody a tip for new storytellers. Sometimes I'll come across people that are writing a book and they won't have talked about the book much. And let's say when I wrote my first book 10 years ago, it might have been longer than that. I think I started writing my first book in 2005. A lot more than 10 years. Okay. So all of a sudden, when I never told anybody about the book. I never told them that I was going to publishers. I never told them anything. Then the book came out. I had to learn to tell the story. I had to learn to get comfortable with it. I hadn't even teased it. Nobody knew. Talk about how to not sell books on day one. Tell nobody that you're writing a book so nobody knows about it. But where I'm going with this is to be comfortable with that story. I want you to turn your camera around. Even if it's 15 seconds on TikTok, even if it's 20 seconds on Facebook, you have to be able to turn the camera around. There, I'm holding my camera, turn it around and talk into it for 15 seconds, 20 seconds about what your story's about. And people are like, well, I'm going to do that when the book's out. Well, here's the problem. If you can't do that now, how much harder is it going to be when you put you put a year into this, and now you're just going to talk about it then? Just give us a piece, give us a little component, give us some. Start getting comfortable, turning that camera around, talking into it, and sharing that message. It could be just a little piece of it, and I think you will be far ahead of had you waited until that book was out. You have to get comfortable sharing that story, because all of a sudden what happens is every author has author reluctancy. They get to the end of it, their book's about to be published, and they're like, I don't know if this book's going to come out. Maybe my mom's not going to like this book. Maybe my friends aren't going to like it. Maybe I talk too much. Maybe I hurt people's feelings. Maybe I'm going to lose my job. And had you explored and got comfortable with this for the year prior, you would be able to alleviate some of those self-doubts down the road. So that's my tip. Use that camera, use it as a tool. And then you can always delete those posts from social media. If everybody says, I hate this, you stink, well, you could always delete it, but they're not going to say that. Okay, sorry for that tirade. Is that a tirade? What's the difference? What is a tirade? Can there be a good tirade, or is every time you just talk like that a tirade?
Isn't it like a rant at the end of the day?
Okay, so a rant's bad, I think. A rant's not good.
I feel like tirade has more of a negative connotation than a rant. I think
what you just did was called a tangent.
A tangent. Okay, I'll accept tangent. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Who said that?
That was Kevin.
Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. See, Kevin knows some stuff. Okay, let's go to Ahmad. We're talking storytelling tips. Ask a question or give us one. What do you got, man?
Hello there, Dom. How are you doing? I hope that you are doing all right. And thank you for inviting me to come up here on the stage. I really like being here every now and then because I really like the vibes. So, in terms of the storytelling, and since I am not a storyteller myself, and I am not, I don't have the experience in terms of storytelling, but I can tell you that. That through the books that I read, that storytelling is a skill, just like swimming, just like running, or just like boxing, and you can nurture this skill by reading more books and by writing short stories. So you can enhance it in a way and make it stronger. And the other thing that I want to say about storytelling is that it need a wide imagination, and you have to be able to think in different ways and write your story in different manners. And also, that I think that the thing about storytelling is that some stories are more relatable, and some stories are not that much. It depends on the writer and the way he approaches story writing, and also it depends on his skills. And the other day I was reading a book, and it was based on a movie. And the thing about the book that I read is that it is very gripping. It cares so much about the details, and I always emphasize on the subject, on caring, uh, on giving so much attention to the small details, because the small things can make a big difference, even though you think that it is not that much important. But yeah, just try to care so much about the details. And yeah, that's it for me. And thank you for giving me the stage.
Ahmad, man, thank you. And I think you, before you got here early, this we basically started the room today talking about the importance of story details, and we were talking about Anthony Bourdain and how good he was at it, and how unique, and the importance of taking. I used to read. I'm ashamed I don't remember the guy. He was one of my mentors. Like when I first started going to book fairs and things like that, selling books, like at tables at county fairs and things like that. But this guy used to write books about the Pittsburgh Steelers and old Pittsburgh athletes and stuff like that. And he could take you to 1950. He would take you to the Sandlot, 1950. I've never been to 1950, right? He'd take you there. He would tell you about the cars. He would tell you about the dirt spots on the football field. And he would almost the smells of the hot dogs cooking. And he was an amazing writer on Pittsburgh history. And now I'm going to have to Jim, forget his name, but incredible. And it was the detail, man. So thank you, Mon. Kevin, man, we're continuing this story writing, storytelling, story sharing tips. You can tell a story on TikTok, on Clubhouse, on Club. Yeah, I've just read Matthew's bio, and I was looking at it. I'm thinking, man, that's a story. I get it. A girl dad. I think. Hold on here. I'm going to skip to this. Combat veteran, girl dad. Just reading those two things, I'm like, I got a daughter, and I respect that he was in combat. Okay, I'm interested in it. So okay, that's telling a story. You can tell a story in your bio. Let's read Kevin. Podcaster, producer, comedian, content creator, event host, and friend you haven't met yet. Well, why haven't we met this guy? Kevin, man, what's going on? Give us some storytelling tips or ask a question.
Okay, well, wish I had gotten here when the room started so I could have heard all of the discussion. But I heard a little bit earlier when someone was talking about the idea that there's only so many stories and we keep hearing different versions of the same story. And one thing that I think is important is realizing your perspective and that your eye view is unique even if you're telling the same kind of story. And someone was mentioned something about being relatable. I feel like all stories and all human experiences are relatable because they all get down to core things: love and loss and passion and desire and drive. All these core human things we have. You can be a world away and you can desire something that I know nothing about, but I understand desire, I understand drive, I understand loss. And if you can't get what you want, the disappointment, we all can understand that. That's all a part of our human journeys. And so I feel like all stories are relatable if they're told the right way. And you tell that story by sharing those core feelings, those core emotions, those core drives that we have as humans.
Thanks, Kevin. Tom, do you want to tackle that storytelling? Because I just want to appreciate it, and I want to make sure that we didn't go negative at all with the storytelling. Because I don't think we think they're all the same. I think there's a format a lot of times where that is an expected format. Let's say where I would say beginning, middle, end. What's the win, or hero's journey, or save the cat. Go on, Tom.
Yeah, no, 100%. I never meant to imply that stories are all the same. I meant to say, like, what I was saying was that there are, kind of constructs that work for storytelling, right? And there are sort of rules to storytelling, like we were talking about before, that, you have to know the rules to break the rules, right? There are rules to storytelling. There are ways of telling stories that are objectively right better than others. And so what I was saying was that it's important to tell stories in a way that makes them relatable. Not that not all stories are relatable, but they're not all told in relatable ways, right? And that was going back to what we were talking about very early on about leading with telling a story built around characters and making sure that those characters, those personalities kind of are at the forefront of the storytelling so that the audience has the opportunity to identify with and empathize with those characters, to see themselves in those characters so that they can relate better to the story rather than simply recounting facts, right? Which is what a lot of sort of people who we all know, people who are bad storytellers, like I said before, that's generally what they do. When they tell stories, they simply recount facts. And those are the kinds of stories that we don't like to listen to because they're not relatable, because none of us have had the exact same, because often we haven't had the exact same set of circumstances or events happen to us in the exact same order following the same timeline. And so it's not relatable. But when you bring human characters into it and human characteristics and emotion, you make it relatable because those are universal. Those are things we all share. So I think we agree. I think I just want to make sure, to clarify that a little bit. But I think ultimately Kevin and I agree. I think, we agree with, he agrees with what I was saying earlier. I think there was just I'm not sure if I, misrepresented what I was saying, but yeah, just wanted to clarify that.
No, man, I love it and appreciate that, Kevin, because we are lovers of the story, man. And there's a beauty in every story. And one of the things we share every week is like your story can make a difference, man. However you need to do it. It could be somebody else's survival guide. If you need to get a megaphone and walk down the streets to share it, if you need to start a podcast, if you need to write a book, whatever format fits for your story or however many ways you want to share it, but get out and do it. And I mean, I don't want anybody to wait one more day. However, do it, get out and scream on the street if you have to. Okay. Not the smartest guys in the room. We got a couple more people to meet today, Thomas. Okay. Now and this is what I was saying about bio. A story here, combat veteran, girl dad, already I'm feeling like, I want to know some more. So Matt, give us, ask a question, give us some storytelling tips or something you do to share your story. Go on.
Thank you for bringing me up, and I hope everybody's having a great Wednesday. I really don't have a story to tell because all of my stories might be a bit gruesome. I'm just playing a little bit, but I do have a question. Um, do we believe that this new AI technology is like really threatening authenticity when it comes to storytelling?
Oh,
Go,
can I go? Go ahead.
Could
Sorry.
I jump in?
hold on. Let me clear this up. We'll go Dr. Tachi, then John.
Hey there. Thank you so much for bringing that up. This is interesting because I'm very much into this whole AI space, chat GPT and all of that. And I think it has the propensity to threaten authenticity. Part of the thing that has always been my argument is while I love these things and these new technologies, there's even more opportunity for people to misrepresent who they are and be inauthentic if something else is writing the story for you, if something else is telling the story for you. However, that said, fraud is always discovered. And if it's something that is not in your voice, that is not within your realm or area of expertise, the moment you get up to try and talk about this in front of people, it's going to be discovered. You didn't write that. You didn't do that. So I think it does have the propensity to, but once you have to get out there and actually demonstrate that you know what you know, all of that goes away because the writing is important and the representation is important, but it's also important what you present and how you present in public, whatever that means. So that's my thought on that.
Interesting. John, go on.
Yeah, I did 2 blog posts using Chat GPT, an AI program. And you can look at them. And here's my opinion. For what I do, it doesn't fit. It almost gives like an encyclopedic response. You could go. Remember the old encyclopedias where you'd copy and paste, or go to Wikipedia and copy and paste. That's what it does. It misses the human aspect of it. So it misses the storytelling aspect of it. That doesn't mean I won't try again. But for now, I think it's great at delivering facts, but it's not really good, at least what I've done, as far as delivering stories, which I'm more interested in the blog and also in the radio show itself. So again, having said that, I'll try one more time. But for as far as I'm concerned right now, it's a big fail. It doesn't work for me at all.
I'd like to add in next if when
Go on,
available.
Jason. Please. Thank you.
I think it is completely adverse to the human experience. It's not, I mean, Dr. Tachi did present some interesting aspects, and efficacy is really going to be the primary problem. Because, I mean, look at once we got phones and it accessed Google, Google became one of the biggest companies out there, and people wanted a fast, quick answer. And then now we move into the next segment of algorithms, your relevancy as a storyteller, content creator, whatever you want to call you. And then add the next, just like what John said, if it's creating for you, what is really yours? It may not fit you now, but will it later? And it only learns and does better if you give the input, the data. So first, you're going to give it the amount of keystrokes, the wordplay. It's going to know, it's going to observe your persona, and it's going to output a similarity according to different variances and habits that you're going to make. So I find it problematic, but then I think to the future, like if we were to go, say, like in the age of Star Trek, where you computer, hey, answer me this, riddle me this, riddle me that, you know, a lot of people feel threatened, and you should, because if it can do everything that you can by words and commands, data input and output, what makes you so relevant? People aim to lose because the design, the ethics in it, it's not presented and evaluated, because it's either efficacy or profits. Which do you prefer? Well, most of us are going to fight for profits so we can have our say and have the keys to the castle we can determine. But we're also giving up ground. So I think for the storyteller, it can be great as a tool to give you, like, look, I'm trying to write a story on serial killers. And you're writing a prompt in GPT, like top 10 results for serial killers in California. And it might give you, it tells you these could be facts and it could also be false. It does warn you about this in the beginning, but you've been using AI, believe it or not. If you've used Paragraph AI, if you've used Grammarly, if you've had to contact, say, like Xfinity or Comcast for customer service, you used AI already. So, as far as a storyteller and the human experience, this brings caution and a great deal of respect of our human experience. And we cannot alleviate telling the story, the perspective, the optics for any convenience, because otherwise, if it can do it for us, how do we really live?
Jason, man, deep as always. Appreciate it. Go on, Tom.
So I want to hop in here because there's a woman who named Kate Crawford, who wrote a book called Atlas of AI. She is a researcher from USC who also works with Microsoft. And one of the things that she's kind of famous for saying is artificial intelligence, or AI, is neither artificial nor intelligent. There's this sort of like false equivalency that has been placed on these artificial intelligence programs or softwares like ChatGPT. And that false equivalence is that they function like human brains do. And the fact is that they definitely don't. And the other thing, too, is they're made of sort of natural resources and man-made content and information, and curated content and information that's been curated by humans traditionally. So I think a better way to think about something like Chat GPT or other AIs is that they're really aggregators and amalgamators, right? They're not intelligence. They don't operate on their own. They can't do anything if you don't direct them to do it, right? So think of it that way. Think of them as the tools that they are, right? Chat GPT is not going to, it is not the sort of artificial intelligence that, is often talked about in like science fiction or in dystopian films where, sentient machines take over the world. I'm thinking of the Matrix off the top of my head, right? It is not the stuff of science fiction. It is simply an algorithm that's designed to aggregate a ton of data, right? And then from that data, amalgamate an output. And so, so they're aggregators and amalgamators. They're not independently intelligent. So the whole artificial intelligence thing is a bit of a misnomer because they can't do anything on their own without being directed to do it. In fact, if you've ever typed a text on a smartphone, you've used AI, because the same kind of algorithms that have been developed for predictive texting and autocorrect, right? That's on every smartphone that you type with, right? Those autocorrect algorithms are the same kind of algorithm that ChatGPT uses. It's just the data that is available to ChatGPT and the way it can use that data to predict outcomes and to create things is different from, is much larger than what's available to the algorithm that's in your smartphone that corrects what you're typing, sometimes correctly, sometimes incorrectly. So I think I don't have any problem with using AI as a tool. I think it can be a great tool, especially if you want to turn out a bunch of text content and article content and stuff like that. You can feed information into it and you can have it spit out an amalgamation of the information you put into it, or other information that's available, online. And then you can use that as a foundation, and all you have to do maybe is do some light editing, and now you've got an article, right? But put your touch on it. Like, I would say definitely touch it. Don't let it stand on its own. Because again, artificial intelligence is not intelligent. It's just taking what it finds, which is why, as Jason was pointing out, that it warns you that it may or may not be factually accurate, right? But use it like a tool. Use it to sort of give you a jumping off point. So you don't have to create an article you're writing or a blog post you're writing from zero. Why not start halfway to done, right? Instead of starting it at zero, right? Take that leg up, get halfway up the ladder, start halfway up the ladder instead of climbing all the way from the bottom. Like, it makes sense to use it as a tool to move forward. But yeah, it's neither intelligent nor artificial. And I think people I still think we are at the point where people are, broadly speaking, a little too fearful of it. I don't think it's anything to be fearful of. I'd be more fearful of privacy concerns. And even then, I wouldn't really be fearful, just cautious of privacy concerns with using online artificial intelligence algorithms like ChatGPT. I'd be more concerned about that than I would be about, sentient computers. But
Okay, hold on here. We had Kevin. Kevin had something to say. Matt had something to say. Then we're going to hit Heather. So go on, Kevin.
Okay, I absolutely agree with the idea that it's an amalgamation, but what is an amalgamation of? Other people's work. So isn't this still plagiarism? If you're basically typing in a few tidbits and then this AI basically gathers a bunch of information from other articles and then feeds it to you, and then you tweak it ever so slightly and put your name on it, aren't you putting your name on someone else's work? Even if it's like 5 other people's work, it's still other people's work that's being spat at you, and you're putting your name on it and putting it out.
Does this stuff, just for my clarity, does it reference other people's stuff where it gets the stuff? Like,
It does not. It
does
does
not
list
not.
it.
Okay, interesting.
It
Okay,
is plagiarism. It is to the max.
Oh, okay. Let's keep going. Heather, we're coming because you're our algorithm master. So hold on. We got Matt, and then we're coming to Heather. Go on, Matt. You clicked off for a second. What'd you have to say? Okay, we're moving on. Heather, we're going to meet Heather. Heather's going to tell us about algorithms. She loves this space. Then we're going to go to Pierre. Go on, Heather.
Hi, everybody. So, we talk a lot about plagiarism, and there are tools that can help you if you are concerned about this AI generation and essentially being plagiarism. But you have to remember that it's combed all of the internet, and a lot of the internet, it's God, I can't believe I forgot the word for it. Like open source, like WordPress is open source, Creative Commons, copyright free. So it may scour the internet, but it also may be pulling just the Creative Commons information. And then you putting a social media post online, that in itself, you don't own the Creative Commons or the copyright to a social media post, because you're putting it out in the public domain on social media, out onto the internet. So, you might want to read the privacy policy and all that stuff for social media profiles, because we do not own any of this crap anymore. But if you are concerned, there are multiple tools that will help you. So, there's Grammarly has a plagiarism tool. And then there's also a new one that just came out specifically for this, and it's called GPT0.me. And you can basically like copy and paste. Like, let's say you're worried that an ebook you just bought was created by ChatGPT. You can go to GPT0.me. I'm typing it in the chat. And you can like copy and paste that whole entire ebook in there, and it'll spit out and let you know how much a percentage of, that content is written by ChatGPT. So, and don't, I think, and somebody asked it specifically in regards to copyright. If you ask ChatGPT, and I forget who was in that room, it was Stefan, we were talking about this, and he asked it, and it specifically stated that, there is no copyright and you own the rights to whatever is spit out of ChatGPT because you are uniquely prompting it. So we may have an issue where there's multiple prompts, like we may use the same prompt from a prompting website, which there are prompting websites already out there, and it may spit out the same exact answer. But why would you want to use that? It's kind of like using this same old. So back in the day, you could get copyright-free blog posts from copyright-free blog post websites, and all you had to do was just give reference back to who wrote it or what website you pulled, and that was how a lot of us got blog posts back in the day to create our presence on our website and increase search engine optimization. So it's kind of like the same thing. If you are unique in using it, then it will spit out something unique that is not on the internet. Take, for example, I have an event coming up. Well, I could ask it to write me 5 social media captions about this barbecue 5 course tasting dinner I'm having in Wilmington, Delaware on January 20th, 2023. Well, there is nothing out there that this chat GPT can copy, because it's literally, I'm just feeding it the date and time, and what it's doing is just creating the verbiage and giving some creativity behind the information I'm putting in there. So sure, you can steal people's stuff all day long, but use it as a tool. Don't use it as a plagiarism tool. Use it as a tool that can help you elevate your creativity and your uniqueness. So that's all I wanted to say. So if you are worried about it, just go to GPT0.me. Okay, love y'all.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, I'm thinking like, what if I wanted to post 10 things that make you smile? 10 things that make people smile, 10 things that are whatever. Is this, yeah, it wouldn't be something that I would ever write in a book or, really want to claim. It would just be, is the reason people are doing this to produce more content, or is it because they're looking for articles with their names on it? It's what a interesting space. So I'm sure we could go for days on that. Somebody should start a room here. This is yours. I'm giving it away. It's not Chat GPT. Start a room and say, is Chat BT, whatever it is it legal? Is it ethical? Is it whatever? You could run that room for 12 straight hours. Okay. Not the smartest guys in the room. We were over our time, but we keep going. But we're going to meet Pierre. And then as always, Tom's going to take us home with a beautiful closing and wrap us all up into tight little bow. Pierre, man, what's going on? Hold on. Let me look at Pierre. Analytics specialist, founder. Okay. Smart guy. He may be the smartest guy in the room. Okay.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I think GPT is going to outdo us all. I do want to touch a little bit on the ethics a little bit and add something to the conversation. I like what Heather was saying about, it's. I think the big problem, honestly, is that it's hard to tell from behind your laptop how something is created, and and kind of see how it's put together, and that kind of that helps you determine if a, the person maybe plagiarized accidentally, or B, or if there was an intent behind it. um it's really hard to do that from behind the laptop in general. I think that's a big core piece of it. But I think and I think it's hard with chat gpt is because if I'm writing on a particular topic, yeah, it's going to summarize from a number of sources. And unlike a search engine, you can't see where the links are for you to vet that. So, for example, if I wanted to talk about apple pies, I have to quantify that, or qualify it. Am I talking about apple pies for baking, as in baking for myself, or am I talking about apple pies, giving a recipe, basically? And I think it's that qualification that I think people are going to be struggling with for a while. But I think what if you're a content provider, I think what you want to do is keep in mind that I think for Chat GDP, it's helpful when you are trying to get kind of a general framework for something. But I think, to what Heather said, you need to be unique in what you apply to it. For analytics, I'll take my area, for example. When I started, I needed to understand JavaScript in order to understand the meaning behind putting a tag behind a website. So that way I could explain to, say, Dominick or Tom or John or Heather, if they came to me as a customer and said, hey, Pierre, we need to add analytics tags, I can understand where they need to be placed. I can put some domain knowledge and trying to tie those placements to what they're doing with their site. So that means there's domain knowledge there that makes it unique. When I think for GPT, when you're taking that content, you use it as a framework, but then you have to. The pushback becomes you have to bring some sort of domain knowledge and figuring out what needs to be applied. Now, for when I talk about JavaScript, JavaScript is a big programming language. There's a lot of different subjects to it. Promises. I didn't need to know promises when I started. Same thing for Chat GPT. If I were writing something on R programming, it could give me a code, but that code is only good up to 2021 because of the when they designed it, they only had information up to that date. There's literally frameworks, dependencies. There's actually a thing called Pipe that came out after 2021. So I say this to say, when you apply whatever you do with that tool, look at the domain knowledge, and if somebody's writing with something, look at how consistent they are from their articles to their videos to even to Clubhouse. And I think what you'll get is a sense of consistency. It's kind of hard to be, an expert in one area and then, come onto a video and you're kind of like flubbing it on everything else. I think that expertise comes through. And that will help you in terms of kind of figuring out, is this being consistent? So I'll say this here and land my plane here to let others speak as well. And thanks for allowing me to come on the stage to offer that.
Thanks, Pierre. Appreciate that, and I couldn't agree more. Honestly, I think what you hit on, what Heather was talking about, and what I was trying to, and I don't think I nailed it, but I was trying to kind of get to that point earlier when I was talking about using it as a tool, right? Using these things as tools, because that's ultimately what they are, right? Can Chat GPT draft a blog post for you? Absolutely. Can you have it write an article for you? Definitely. Should you then turn around and publish that article without adding anything or taking anything out of it yourself, without kind of without editing it? Absolutely not. Right. And that's because it is an aggregator, right? It is pulling from data points or data sets that have been inputted into it, that it has access to compile that article, right? It's compiling information. But it is not contextualizing that information well. And you, by editing it, are adding your perspective, right? And that's what makes it unique, right? Because you are the only person to ever have your lived experience. You are the only person to have everything that's happened to you in your life happen to you in exactly the way it's happened to you, right? That is the thing that makes each of us individual, right? Is our experience in this world. Everyone's experience is just a little bit different. Okay. So I think it's super important that you treat it like a tool. Think of it as a leg up, right? If you want to think of writing an article as a 5-story walk up, right? A 5-story walk up apartment building, right? If you're writing an article and getting to finishing that article is akin to getting to the rooftop of that 5-story walk up, well, using something like Chat GPT can mean that you start on the 3rd floor rather than starting on the street. And that's where I think it's super useful. And if you do that, if you actually use it as a starting point to create content, it can save you a lot of time, right? You can't argue with the efficiency of it. It can save you a ton of time, right? In aggregating all of that information. You can let it compile that information for you very, very quickly, and then put your spin on it, add your unique perspective to it. And now you're not worried about plagiarizing, right? You're not worried, and you can always double check to make sure that with tools like Heather pointed out, GPT-0, right? You can always double check to make sure you're not accidentally plagiarizing someone. But you now have taken something that was created by something that is neither artificial nor intelligent and made it intelligent by adding your own perspective to it. And I think that's the really important thing to say. And I'll take it back to the conversation we had earlier on in the room, is that we are always influenced, right? We are 100% influenced by our experiences, by the world around us, by our interactions with other human beings, by the things that we consume, the things we see, the things that impact our lives. We are influenced by everything that we encounter. What makes content unique and original is the way that we interpret and then share those experiences, right? And that influence from the outside world. So we all live in the same world, but we all see it a little bit differently. And so I think what's really important is if you want to create original content, if you want to stand out as an original, if you want to share your voice and tell stories, then what you really need to do is pay attention to what's going on in the world around you. Take all of that that's available to you, put your spin on it, and then share that with the world, right? And that's I think is a good way to approach doing that. So so that's my wrap up for today. I think is just make sure that you put your hands on it, your touch on it. Make sure you touch it and mold it so that it carries with it a piece of you and a piece of your unique perspective on the world. And I think that's all I got for today. Pierre, did you want to add in one quick note before we wrap up?
I just run one quick note. I really love your analogy about starting from the 3rd floor versus starting at the bottom. I just scribbled a note here while you were talking. But yeah, you're right. I do think that adding your touch will make a big difference. I don't think listicles will be the I think that will be the content that will go away, because this thing with Chat GGP will force people to kind of think about what sort of touch they have. So I like what you said. Just wanted to say that, and I'll land my plane here.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Pierre. Yeah, I love analogies and metaphors. So always gives me a huge kick when when one lands with someone. So thanks for saying that. I really appreciate it. But yeah, so just, bear in mind that, innovation is all about taking what already exists in the world and putting your own spin on it, right? Organizing it in your own unique way, using your unique voice and your unique experience. And that's true of the content we create. So just make sure you touch it, make sure you put your spin on it, make sure you mold it in your image before you share it with the world. And you won't have to worry about plagiarism, because nobody is like you. Like I like to say, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you. So be relentlessly authentic, be you, share yourself with the world, and let everybody else benefit from getting to know you. And that's it. That's all I got for today. So thanks everybody for coming by. Thanks for being in the room. Thanks for sharing the room. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and insights with us, for asking your questions, all of the above. We really appreciate it. For Dom, I'm Tom, and we are not the smartest guys in the room. We will see you guys next Wednesday, 9:30 a.m. Same place, same time. See you guys then. Have a great week. Bye-bye.